Hi, I'm Will Studd and welcome to Cheese Slices. One of my favourite cheeses is Camembert, but I'm not talking about any old Camembert, but genuine Normandy Camembert. This cheese has a fascinating history and is made according to very strict rules. When you taste it, you realise there's just no substitute.
The most popular cheese in France is Camembert, and for generations its name has graced the tables of cheese lovers around the world. Not bad for a cheese that's supposed to smell like the feet of God and have an aftertaste of cooked cauliflower and wet straw. There are hundreds of cheeses now masquerading under the name of Camembert, making it one of the most copied cheeses in the world. To see how a genuine French Camembert is made, we'll take you to the north of France, the picturesque green countryside of Normandy. Dairy farming in Normandy was begun by monks way back in the 6th century. The region's unique breed of cow, known as the Normande, was first introduced here by the Vikings, who raped and pillaged the countryside before their descendants settled down to make great cheeses. In the centre of the tiny village of Camembert, there is a museum and a shop filled with trinkets and artefacts celebrating this wonderful cheese. And oddly enough, the museum's owner is English.
Can you just explain to me a little about the story of Marie Harel, from your point of view?
The legend, as I tell visitors, she was a simple farmer's lady who met a monk trying to flee the French Revolution. He was called Jean Bonvou. I understand he was on his way to England to flee the guillotine because he'd be caught at that time. Things could be very serious. And she hid him up at the farmhouse, which is called the Manoir de Beaumoncel. She hid him behind a chimney. It's all... And to thank her for her hospitality, he taught her how to make the rind of the Camembert cheese. Up to then, it was just a simple cottage cheese and not easy to take to market. So he taught her how to make the rind, very like a brie cheese.
How did he know that?
Well, coming from the area.
Oh, he came from Brie?
Coming from the region of Caux, where cheeses were made.
Yep.
Camembert's reputation really took off after the opening of a new rail line from Paris to Granville in 1865, where Marie Harel's grandson is said to have presented a cheese to Napoleon III. When asked where the delicious cheese came from, he replied, Camembert, and so began the legend. But one of the most important changes of all was the invention of the wooden box in the 1890s by Monsieur Ridel. Until then, the only method of packing and transporting Camembert had been between layers of straw, which meant it could never travel far, even on the railways. The new box changed how Camembert tasted. It was now easy to transport, sell and look after at home. The box also provided an extraordinary marketing opportunity, as an eye-catching label could now be attached to the cheese, further spreading the myth of Camembert. Once you had finished enjoying your Camembert, the box and label remained, and you can still find many classic old labels in antique shops around Normandy that reflect the history of France. Along a winding lane just a few kilometres from the village of Camembert, you'll find the farm of Monsieur Durand, who is one of the last farm or fermier cheesemakers still producing Camembert.
For how long have you been faire le fromage ici?
I've been making cheese here since 1981. Yeah, it's been a long time.
L'histoire de la ferme?
Alors l'histoire, j'ai commencé, moi je suis rentré.
The background is that I needed a source of income on the farm, which my parents were still operating.
Mes parents étaient encore en activité. Et donc à ce moment-là, j'ai des voisins.
At the time, some neighbors were making Camembert.
Ils ont pris leur retraite. Et
One day retired, they showed me all the equipment and brought everything to our place, and that's how it all started back in 1981.
en 1982.
Et combien de vaches?
Well, at the moment, we've got 50 cows, and we make around 400 Camembert a day.
The whole process of making genuine Camembert requires great respect for tradition. The delicate curds are set in small vats of less than 100 litres and then transferred by hand into 11 centimetre moulds using a ladle with the same circumference. This gentle technique, known as moulé à la louche, must take place in 4 separate stages over a period of 5 hours, a system which is very hard to replicate on an industrial scale.
C'est vrai que c'est important, mais c'est pas facile à définir parce que c'est assez...
Well, the taste of the camembert is quite hard to define because it's such a personal thing.
Donc, il est pas trop piquant.
This one is not too sharp, but not too ammoniac either. Possibly a little bit of apple in there.
Un goût de pomme.
A little bit of apple, a little bit of armagnac, yes. Anything else? Pour moi, for example, c'est l'arôme de la foin.
Ah ouais, on dit aussi goût.
Yeah, we always say tastes like straw.
Et aussi le cauliflower. Choux-flower. Choux-flower?
Souffleur.
Yeah, it's right. It's bit. It tastes like cauliflower.
Oui, c'est vrai, oui.
Oui, ça c'est vrai.
Once drained and sprayed with 3 types of penicillium mould, the cheeses are sprinkled with dry salt and sent to the maturation rooms. It's here where temperature and humidity encourage the moulds and bacteria to grow on the rind. Each room gives off a different aroma, from the smell of fermented apple juice to mushrooms and yeast, depending on the maturation stage. After 2 weeks, the cheeses have developed their characteristic mould covering. Camembert are aged for a minimum of 21 days before being sold, and in Normandy are enjoyed when the heart is still white and chalky.
Vous n'avez pas pris votre petit déjeuner?
In addition to sales from the dairy, the Durand also sell the Camembert at Bermoutier Market, which was once frequented by the legendary Marie Harel. The stall is a popular one, and the sales provide enough money to keep the dairy functioning.
Au revoir, merci.
One question I'm always being asked is what's the difference between Brie and Camembert? After all, they're both round cheeses and they both ripen with a surface mould. But in fact, there's a world of difference.
Despite their similarities, these cheeses developed 1,000 years apart and in different regions of France. Brie cheeses are the oldest and originated in the fertile Ile-de-France region that lies between the Seine and Marne rivers, just on the outskirts of modern Paris. Originally, they took their names from the local villages and were made in a variety of sizes. The largest and most famous is Brie de Meaux. Genuine Normandy Camembert, on the other hand, is only made in one size and has a much shorter history. Traditionally, Brie was matured on straw, and Sylvie Rosaire explained the recent transition to plastic mats and the origins of this third-generation family-owned company.
Yeah, this company was created in 1960 by my father. Yeah, and he developed, he collect brie in different farmer brie, and few years later, in 1965, I think, he created the first specialty, Fromagent. And in 1986, we take the company with my brother, my sister-in-law, and me, so it's a family company.
So how many generations is that?
Third, because before my father, my grandfather sells cheese on the market, local market.
In here in Tournon?
Yeah, in Tournon, yeah.
Because of its size, Brie de Meaux takes 2 months to mature, and so the flavour is slower to develop than Camembert. If you taste a ripe Brie de Meaux and Normandy Camembert in the same sitting, the difference between the two flavours is obvious. To better understand the various regional flavours of Camembert, I visited one of France's famous cheese masters, Roland Bartholomé.
In the region around Auge, the cheese is very firm and the taste is quite aromatic, penetrating and full-bodied. On the other hand, if we move away a bit to the Orne region, especially the outer limits of Orne, the texture of cheese is more tender and the palate is less delicate. If we go back up to Normandy, especially at Isigny-sur-Mer, where there is a substantial and excellent quality dairy industry, one of the best camemberts is actually made at Isigny-sur-Mer. There, the cheese rind is slightly rippled with very fine tips, and the taste, the delicacy, the palate is truly exceptional. One of the really great cheeses.
Et cela, je crois que dans un monde respectueux de
And I
l'environnement,
believe that in a world which is very conscious of the environment,
au fil des siècles, des générations antérieures,
conscious of caring and tradition,
nous devons conserver la diversité
we
dans
must
la
conserve
liberté
diversity by having the freedom to express the difference
de pouvoir exprimer
between this cheese and that cheese.
et tel fromage. Et pour cela,
It would be a serious mistake for future generations if there was uniformity of taste,
une uniformité de goût et que tous les
with all dairy, fruit, any agriculture product tasting exactly the same.
fruitières ou autres aient exactement le
Now
même goût.
that would be a serious mistake.
Normandy witnessed some of the heaviest fighting in World War II, and many thousands of men died here during the liberation of Europe.
There's a scene of absolute confusion. The second wave crashes into it, goes to ground. At this point, the divisional commander, Costa, thinks, gosh, something's going wrong, I must do something about it, and follows in. At 9 o'clock, the landing has failed here. It's been pinned down, it's getting nowhere.
It seemed like yesterday at times, you know? Yeah, you think of the old people you left behind.
Each year, on the anniversary of D-Day in June, the beaches and silent cemeteries are visited by old soldiers and their descendants to remember the heroism of those that fell. The small town of Saint-Mer was one of the first in France to be liberated. Allied soldiers from the 82nd and 101st Airborne parachuted into the town square, and one soldier, John Steele, landed on the church steeple. Although deafened from the sound of the church bells, he lived to tell the tale. On the anniversary of liberation, there is a carnival atmosphere. National flags are proudly hoisted, and enthusiasts from all over the world dress as Allied soldiers and drive ancient military vehicles in convoys through the small villages and towns. Normandy is famous for its regional cuisine, which is based around cheese, butter, creme fraiche and fresh seafood. One of the finest restaurants on this coastal strip is Chez Roger, where Chef Joel serves delicious seafood dishes and some stunning recipes using Camembert.
I'm here at restaurant Chez Roger with my friend Joel. Bonjour. And he's going to show us a wonderful recipe for a cooked camembert called fondue.
Fondue camembert.
Fondue camembert or fondue normand?
Normand.
Okay, go for it, Joel.
Je vous présente les produits. Alors, un camembert
AOC.
médaillon, AOC médaillon, de l'ail,
Oui, garlic.
des herbes,
Quelle herbe?
c'est du thym,
Thyme.
thym, du persil,
Parsley.
et nous allons blanchir l'ail.
So you blanch the garlic.
Voilà. Alors l'ail, on va là
For combien de temps?
quelques secondes, 5 minutes.
Just 5 minutes. Little hole into the camembert. Notice this wooden base. Oui.
Dans la boîte.
A wooden box. Very important, otherwise when you put the camembert in the oven, it'll just go. Any nice red wine you've got left lying around, as long as it's nice.
Et pour que le vin pénètre bien dedans.
Okay, just push it around so the wine works its way into the cheese.
Voilà. On va mettre des herbes. Alors ça peut être du thym, mais ça peut être des herbes, d'autres
Okay, you
herbes.
can use
hein.
lots of other
Voilà.
herbs. Don't have to use
On
thyme.
met du parfum, ça peut être de l'estragon, ça peut
Tarragon.
être du coriandre, ça peut être autre
Coriander,
chose.
etc. Lovely, yeah.
Mais là, aujourd'hui, nous avons du thym et du persil du jardin. Donc, on met
And
le
some
thym,
fresh parsley.
voilà, et on va remettre
bit
encore
more
un
wine.
peu de vin dessus. Voilà.
Lovely.
Un peu de moulin à poivre.
Freshly ground pepper.
Voilà. Moulin à poivre.
Lovely.
Voilà.
And then what do you do with it?
Et on va mettre au four sur 200. 200.
200 degrees.
Et pendant
Pour
10
combien de
minutes.
temps?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay. Pop it into the oven for 10 minutes. And the result is fantastic. Here's a Normandy Camembert AOC. Expliquez-moi le goût, s'il vous plaît.
Le goût, le camembert doit être moelleux, bien moelleux,
Nice and soft.
tendre en main, crémeux,
Creamy.
avec
A lovely smell.
voilà,
Yeah.
crémeux,
And the flavour that
rond, crémeux,
round, yeah.
et bien moelleux comme ça.
And the flavour that goes all the way back up the back of your nostrils, right up here. Just lingers along.
Bonnes odeurs.
And you can taste the smell. Something like cauliflower or the brassica family. Delicious. Really taste the smell.
Normandy has the perfect climate to grow apples, and the local cheeses, including Camembert, have traditionally been matched with a glass of cider or a distilled apple brandy called Calvados. It's a winning combination, the sweetness of the apple juice complementing the flavour and texture of the cheese. Joel recommends Calvados be enjoyed with his luscious Camembert dish, but you do so at your own risk, because this stuff can be lethal. One of the most respected Normandy Camemberts comes from the cooperative of Isigny-Saint-Mer. This dairy has won more prizes than any other Camembert producer, an achievement they attribute to the region's unique raw milk and their commitment to traditional cheese-making techniques. Despite its impressive size, the emphasis here has remained on maintaining traditional methods without compromising quality or flavour.
In Isigny, we do respect a lot the tradition. We do respect the AOC, and we want to preserve definitely this tradition. So again, we have some cheese masters who've been working for the company for maybe 20 years, 25 years, so they know perfectly how the milk change all the year long. That's why we can say that the product made by Isigny are definitely a very, very good product. You can see where we are now, so I mean we are really in the middle of a very nice countryside, and we are in Isigny is a marshland area, and that's something you will find really in the product. I mean of the company of Isigny. In a sense, the grass itself will give its characteristic, its features to the milk. That means we'll have milk which is rich, very tasty, very fatty as well, which will change also according to the time of the year. This company wants to keep the tradition. That means even though the production line may look quite modern, but that's the first step of the process. But all the ripening is still very important. That means to perfectly ripen a cheese, definitely you need the hand of the cheese master. Otherwise, I mean the result won't be the same as an industrial product.
Another name synonymous with French cheese is Jacques Vernier, a Parisian affineur, who for more than 30 years has been responsible for protecting France's great cheeses.
Les clients deviennent de plus en plus connaisseurs.
Oui.
Et les clients souhaitent avoir des fromages.
Clients are becoming more and more discerning these days. They want totally natural cheese which is full flavored.
les fromages au lait cru.
Actually, more and more of them are asking for raw milk cheeses.
Amène la grande qualité. En fait, amène tout le plaisir.
Raw milk produces a much finer quality, much better flavor.
C'est très bien aussi.
Pasteurization is good, but it tends to even out the flavor.
Dans les produits au lait cru,
with raw milk cheeses, the distinctive character of the cheese is respected.
The art of curing cheese is called affinage in France, and Jack's shop in Paris has state-of-the-art cellars where humidity and temperature are carefully controlled.
C'est très important.
Oui.
Ce qui
No,
fait
it's
la
very important.
particularité.
We are so lucky in France to have such a diversity of cheese that at any time of the year, spring, summer, autumn or winter, there is a cheese to satisfy every
On a des
taste.
fromages qui correspondent à notre plaisir. La France est une mosaïque.
France is a mosaic of cheese,
Et c'est la variété très
and
importante.
I really do love every single one of them.
Donc, j'aime tous les fromages.
Oui.
Car
There
j'ai un
is a
fromage
cheese for every moment.
In some countries, you will sadly only find pasteurised versions of Camembert, which are really a pale reflection of their famous French cousins. Whilst the name has spread throughout the world, it's important not to lose touch of what real Normandy Camembert tastes like. It's a flavour that is fundamental as a point of reference for all who sought to follow and use the famous name. This is a true benchmark cheese.